All right, looks like we are live and with good streaming conditions. Guys, I basically am just going to retcon the video I was going to make the other day on Wednesday when I had all the problems. So I privated those videos. They're not down or anything, but I don't know if it's worth anyone's while to listen to me in two 20-minute segments.
All right,
as
looks like we are live.
Oh. And with good streaming conditions. Guys, entropy always does that to me. So, you guys heard that. You picked it up, or OBS picked it up. Entropy likes to reset its volume when I sign back in, and I can't do anything about it till the stream comes on. So, anyways, we're just going to go back and do what I had planned on doing the other day. And hi, Shelly. Glad you're here. And there are a few things I wanted to talk about that I'm well rested today. Yesterday I was extremely tired. I had 2 days of not very much sleep. But there are a few things I wanted to address that I said yesterday that I kind of fumbled on from what I observed of the stream when I rewatched it before I went to bed. And that is, I was looking for First Peter as far as the quote from "Gird up your loins," which I generally read First and Second Peter back to back if I read them because they're not very long, unless I'm looking for specific passages. So I get those things confused often, and numbers and dyslexia and stuff. It gets confusing sometimes. Hello, Holly. Oh, and there was the other thing here. I wanted to show you guys this. So this is, like I was saying, a Bible. This is a New King James Version. This is a Bible without any verses. It's just a straight read. And this is really good because it will change the way you kind of look and observe at it instead of trying to break everything up. One of the biggest problems of chapter and verse, it isn't the convenience of it. The convenience of it's amazing. It is the just simply taking things out of context part that is that's bad, right? If I pull like a little thing out of context, I can take any sentence that anyone says out of context at any point ever. I can make folks sound like they believe something, right? They do it all the time. People cut clips, cut quotes off in the media to make people look bad. They did this to Donald Trump. Well, that's the same thing that Christians do when they use proof texts. Again, somebody in the Justify the Memes commented to me to read Deuteronomy 17 because Moses prophesied. Well, he didn't say that, but I know what I went back to read it. And Moses prophesied that Israel would have a king because they would ask for one. And I was like, oh, so I guess what you're saying is that, and he's like, see, God led for a provision for the king. I said, no, God told them they were asked for a king, but he also told them to not be like the world. So what you're saying is that if God prophesied the beast system, that is the system of kings and empires here on the earth, if he prophesied for that, that must mean he led a concession for it. Right? Except for he kind of said, don't take the mark of the beast. So I'm not going to try to teach someone how to logic, though. And, I'll leave them to their own devices. And he's like, go back and read it after I left my long spiel about the thing, because I basically just tore it apart. There's no grounding whatsoever in that, in my belief. I don't know there's any early church grounding in that. There might be some people in the faith who believe that, but it seems counterintuitive to me, considering the first real bad guy outside of Cain in the Bible was Nimrod, who was the first king by legend, according to Talmudic tradition. And the book of Revelation ends with the idea of this beast system, which is about kingdoms, guys, and empires, and worshiping the worldly kings and the economy here, and the worldly things, and that Christ is supposed to be our king. But between all that, I'm going to take one little proof text from Deuteronomy 17 and decide that means that 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 God wanted us to have kings here on earth. No, not at all. And I told him that the Israelite kings were all pretty much incompetent, except for and even David became corrupt, as well as Solomon. He's like, David was a great king. I'm like, are you serious? His whole entire kingdom was divided, and he was not allowed. God would not allow him to build the temple because he had done so much sin. At the very end of David's life, he changed. He realized what he had done. He took a man's wife. He took a man and sent him out to the front lines for battle, for war, so he could have his wife. He purposely made her a widow because he wanted her, because of the lust in his heart. You're going to tell me that David was a good king? No. David was a good man when he was young, and he fell away from the Lord, and he had to do a great deal of repentance, and he nearly destroyed the entire kingdom. That's the story of David. Let's get things straight, folks. And the entire Bible is that. The entire scripture is about folks doing what they want to do instead of what God wants them to do, and they fail. Which is why we don't look at them. Now, there can be inspiration to them, but we don't look at them and think of them as perfect beings or characters. We look at them and we say, oh, God uses flawed people. Christ is the one we need to be looking to. So anyways, hey guys, thanks for pouring in here. Get off my soapbox. Holly's on a Friday afternoon run. And old Dullhuck is here. So whoever else is in the background, not in the chat, started listening to the Jordan Peterson Bible series. Yeah, I like that series, although I think a lot of his stuff there is just a rehashing of Nietzschean and Jungian ideas, and that the belief that Christianity came out of pagan beliefs, which I don't think so. Now, Abraham definitely was most likely a moon worshiper. He came from the areas of the Middle East, more or less, that Islam is at now, or was birthed in Arabia, in the Fertile Crest from the area of Babylon. But, and there's a perfect example too, by the way. Abraham, he messed up because he was told by his wife to go have a baby. They didn't trust in God, and they said, go have a baby with my maid servant. And he did, but that baby was not the baby that God intended him to have in Isaac. So we have to understand these things, that the people in the scriptures are definitely not perfect. They never were. In any case, I should get to what I want to get to. I'm not going to talk about any news today, although I will say, go check out Jack Murphy's podcast from the day, because it was really good. It was really edifying. I didn't catch it all. I caught the end of it about an hour ago, right before it went off. And I don't watch Jack Murphy that often, but I am sub to him. But, he talks a lot about masculinity, male leadership, all that stuff. And he had Kurt Schleichinger, or whatever his name is. Anyways. They were talking about some things that were just good and interesting, and let's see, just making sure everything's running smooth, guys, before I get into this here. All right, so a few things real quick too on all the stuff I was talking about yesterday. If we look here, this is the website, the Early Church Writings. I pulled this up. This is the dating and the order of these books. Some of these are canonical scriptures, of course. Not all of these are the early church fathers. Some of these are Gnostic scriptures, but these are all of the scriptures. Actually, you know what? I don't think the Gnostics are in this list, but these are Apocrypha then. Not all of these are the church fathers per se, but they're books, and they'll give you some perspective. Now, if you see there, I have highlighted Victorinus, and I had pulled that up here because he has the basically the earliest, aside from Irenaeus's on heresy, right? He's got some of the earliest writings on the Book of Revelation. So this is from that website particularly. You can also go find this over on the New Advent. And this is a little bit more reader-friendly. And what he does here is very simple. He takes the scripture, he quotes it, and then he talks about it in the context of other scripture. It's kind of amazing how that works. And as you go through, you'll see this. He says, right here, it says, from the 7 spirits which are before his throne, we read of the 7-fold spirit of Isaiah, namely the spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, of knowledge and piety, and the spirit of fear of the Lord. So you can find that in Isaiah, the 7 spirits, but that's how he related this. And this is how you need to go through Scripture to understand it. You don't need other people to tell you what it means if you understand it in its totality, in its context. Just don't pull things out of context. You don't need someone to tell you how to read it if you always understand that it points back to Christ. If you do that, if you read and you understand that everything in the Old Testament points forward to Christ and everything from the apostles points back to Christ, except for the 4 Gospels when Christ was alive, right? There is no conflict. I hear this a lot in certain circles. There is no conflict between Paul and Peter. They don't contradict each other, or James and Paul. There's no contradiction there. You're not looking at it from the perspective of Christ. You're looking at it from the perspective of Paul or Peter. And this is a problem in the Western church where certain people are propped up. Augustine is propped up. He wasn't even an apostle. He lived 400 years after they lived. And Paul is propped up because of his epistles and his ministry to the Gentiles. Paul is wonderful. Paul is not the bee's knees, though. He's not the end-all, be-all. Christ is, though. And that's where we always need to focus, for those of you, once again, in the faith. So, the politics of obedience, the discourse of voluntary servitude. I have no, I've never read this before, but I'm understanding it's a treat. I have no clue how much of this we'll get through. Maybe I'll try to do the whole thing. I don't know. I am going to skip this introduction by Murray Rothbard. I'm not a big fan of Rothbard, even though I consider myself an Austrian when it comes to economics. Because Rothbard has weird beliefs, like you can be agnostic or an atheist, which he is. He's a Jewish atheist, and that you can have an anarcho-capitalist society in that. No. No, you cannot. That will not ever happen. And I'll tell you why it will never happen. Because you need a strong fundamental moral grounding, or you get what we just got the last century. What Nietzsche predicted. There needed to be an Uberman to overcome the death of God. And if not, if people did not become that Superman, then a strong man would come and destroy things. And that's exactly what happened. Nearly half the world suffered because of this. Probably more than that. So, oh my goodness, Rothbard goes on for 30 pages. All right, let's see if I can get to the beginning of this quickly. I know a lot of libertarian folks who like Murray Rothbard. I'd rather read von Mises. Rothbard has some contributing ideas. I don't know how you get to Ancapistan and no religion and think you're going to have some sort of utopia when you're, well, it's what normally smart people do. They think that they are smart enough to do everything themselves. Almost there, guys. Almost there. Almost there. It's away. All right. By the way, folks, I know I've been rambling for the last 15 minutes or so, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to go over 2 hours. I have birthing classes tonight because Monday we did not. If you remember, I had that epic 4-hour long stream. The Politics of Obedience and Political Servitude. Publisher note from the 1975 edition. This translation by Harry Kurz is based on the manuscript in the Bibliothèque Nationale, which may well have originally belonged to Montenegro. Anyways, it was first published here without Mr. Kurtz's marginal notes. Blah 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 blah. Who cares? But this was written in 1755, or sorry, 1577. That's dyslexia, folks, right there. That's that real-time action. You want to see that? That's what I just perceived. 1755. No, it's 1577. Are we going to get to the book? Here we go. Part 1. The fundamental political question is, why do people obey a government? The answer that they tend to enslave themselves, to let themselves be governed by tyrants. Freedom from servitude comes not from violent action, but from refusal to serve tyrants. Refusal to serve. Tyrants fall when people withdraw their support. I see no good in having several lords. Let one alone be master. Let one alone be king. Man after my own heart. These words Homer put in the mouths of Ulysses as he addressed the people. If he had said nothing further than, I see no good in having several lords, I would have well spoken. I would have been well spoken. For the sake of logic, he should have maintained that the rule of several could not be good, since the power of one man alone, as soon as he acquires the title of master, becomes abusive and unreasonable. Yes. Yes. Let's see if this helps me slow down the reading so I don't miss all this. Okay, for the sake of logic, he should have maintained that the rule of several could not be good, since the power of one man alone, as soon as he acquires the title of master, becomes abusive and unreasonable. Instead, he declared that what seems preposterous, let one alone be master, let one alone be king. Now, I said yes to that, because you know my stance on that. Christ is our king. We don't need anything else. We need maybe a council of strong men, of men of good character, to settle disputes amongst other folks justly. We need law, and we need to be able to uphold the laws. But that's about it. That's about it, in my opinion. I don't need anything else, and let the big governments squabble over their power and authority. By the way, guys, go, another thing just came off the top of my head, thinking of, go watch Tim Pool's early segment this morning. He's talking about the massive inflation coming. That's something that's been on my heart for about 15 years or more now, and tell people all the time, oh, dude, inflation. Why can't we spend more? Biden's about to, or trying to, I doubt it'll get passed, but we'll see, trying to do it probably will get passed, because we'll shut down the government if it doesn't. But trying to do a $6 trillion spending, more spending than we've ever done since World War II, I think. Because that's going to help everything. No, it's just, he's literally trying to accelerate things. People will be asking for the Chinese to come in and regulate us, or whatever it is, the world government. They're going to ask for these things, folks, because this is what happens. They're too foolish to understand that despots have stolen their wealth for generations, and they are doing a Ponzi scheme and outsourcing our manufacturing or resources to the world. And it sort of props us up here for a time, but eventually it all has to fall. It all has to crumble. And if you're the world reserve currency, that is the petrodollar, if that is the case, then, you can't just destroy it easily. You have to go balls to the walls, as they say. You do. You have to go really, really hard at it because it's the only means of exchange for oil. So it basically needs to become worthless for other nations to go, well, we're not going to trade oil on that anymore. That agreement no longer stands. So, anyways, let's read this book. We must not be critical of Ulysses, who at the moment was perhaps obliged to speak these words in order to quell a mutiny in the army. For this reason, in my opinion, choosing language to meet the emergency rather than the truth. Yet in the light of reason, it is a great misfortune to be at the beck and call of one's master, for it is impossible to be sure that he is going to be kind, since it is always in his power to be cruel whenever he pleases. This goes back to what I was just talking about in the scriptures. The Israelites wanted a king. Saul was a tall man. He was a head taller than everyone else. So he was probably like, 6 foot, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". People back in the day, depending on their nutrition, weren't necessarily as tall. At least not people who lived in agrarian societies. Hunter-gatherers would have been, but that's another issue. And the people respected him and wanted him because he was a tall guy. That was it. And you all know this is true. This is how people act. I'm not going to say that a bigger guy doesn't have more strength or power, obviously. But it doesn't also mean that they're a good leader or a ruler in any way, shape, or form. And he was a terrible king. And David, had to run away from him because he was jealous. Saul was jealous of David. And eventually David became the king. But just like I said before, David became corrupt. Power corrupts, guys. There's no arguing this. Unless you want to argue that human nature is completely moldable, and to which I would say you're an idiot and quite ignorant of the reality in which things work. Yet in the light of reason, it is a great misfortune to be at the beck and call of one master, for it is impossible to be sure that he is going to be kind, since it is always in his power to be cruel whatever he pleases. As for having several masters, according to the number one has, it amounts to being that many times unfortunate. Just like the swamp. Although I do not wish at this time to discuss this much debated question, namely whether other types of government are preferable to monarchy, still I should like to know, before casting doubt on the place that monarchy should occupy among commonwealths, whether or not it belongs to such a group, since it is hard to believe that there is anything of commonwealth in a country where everything belongs to one master. This question, however, can remain for another time and would really require a separate treatment involving, by its very nature, all sorts of political discussion. For the present, I should like merely to understand how it happens that so many men, so many villages, so many cities, so many nations sometimes suffer under a single tyrant who has no other power than the power they give him, who is able to harm them only to the extent to which they have the willingness to bear with him, who could do them absolutely no injury unless they preferred to put up with him rather than contradict him. Surely a striking situation, yet it is so common that one must grieve the more and wonder the less at the spectacle of 1,000,000 men serving in wretchedness, their necks under the yoke, not constrained by a greater multitude, than they, but simply, it would seem, delighted and charmed by the name of one man alone whose power they need not fear, for he is evidently the one person whose qualities they cannot admire because of his inhumanity and brutality towards them. A weakness characteristic of humankind is that we often have to obey force. We have to make concessions. We ourselves cannot always be strong. Therefore, when a nation is constrained by the fortune of war to serve a single cliche, as happened when the city of Athens served the 30 tyrants, one should not be amazed that the nation obeys, but simply be grieved by the situation, or rather, instead of being amazed or saddened, consider patently the evil and look forward, hopefully, toward a happier future. So what he's saying is that war kind of necessitates this, kind of necessitates a strong leader. I would kind of agree with that. Generally speaking, you don't want too many leaders in a war arguing about strategy and how to go about things. There needs to be a synergy. It would depend, though. Like, I'm very much about decentralized command. Now, I learned this as a Marine. We, in the Marine Corps, are all about decentralized command because it is the most effective way to have strong leadership, because you build leaders from the ground up instead of from the top down. It enforces responsibility upon subordinates. It teaches subordinates, it allows subordinates leeway because they having to know 2 to 3 jobs ahead of them, that is 2 to 3 positions ahead of them, usually at least 2. So if you're just a private or a PFC, a private first class, or an E1 or an E2, you're fresh, brand new boot. They want to train you up so that you can be at least a squad leader. So that means a team leader. That is a guy in charge of 3 people. I'm talking infantry too, because Marine Corps has a different kind of infantry squad and platoon setup than other military services, especially the Army. But yeah, a team leader has 3 guys under him. So there's 4 people in a team, and a squad is consisted of 3 teams, and a squad leader. And the platoon gets scaled up to that as well. So everyone knows so many jobs ahead of them. So the private should know his squad leader's job. The team leader should know his platoon sergeant's job. The squad leader should know his platoon commander's job to some degree. Those are the officers. That builds strong character, strong leadership in people. It disseminates things. And I think it's a fundamental principle of freedom, because there is no freedom without responsibility. All right. Our nature is such that the common duties of human relationship occupy a great part of the course of our life. It is reasonable to love virtue, to esteem good deeds, to be grateful for good from whatever source we may receive it. And often, I give up some of our comfort in order to increase the honor and advantage of some men whom we love and who deserves it. Therefore, if the inhabitants of a country have found some great personage who has shown rare foresight in protecting them in an emergency, rare boldness in defending them, rare solicitude in governing them, and if, from that point on, they contradict the habit of obeying him and depending on him to such an extent that they grant him certain prerogatives, I fear such a procedure is not prudent, inasmuch as they remove him from a position in which he was doing good and advance him to a dignity in which he may do evil. So again, they're saying there might be a person who, well, me, right? Like, I'm not trying to make this about me, but me, I'm seeing things going on. You guys are too, but I'm out here speaking. I'm trying to provide leadership right? But then if you were to elevate me and prop me up as a king or something, that puts me in a position to do evil. Whereas now I'm just informing you, providing you with some food for thought, some education, and trying to get you guys to open your eyes. And most of you, I'm pretty sure, are well aware of what's going on if you watch me regularly. But I'm trying to get you to open your eyes to what's going on in the world and what's coming so that you and your families can be safe. And at the same time, I want to build communities. Joshua Ham and I had a very good conversation the other night after the Ends Justify the Memes were over. And about a certain property him and his wife are looking at in West Virginia here. And how we might be able to build this up into something that actually is sustainable. So there you go. I started this a year ago. I've been wanting to get out on my own for a long time, out in the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. And then the craziness started happening. The craziness ramped up, I should say. Then the election, I was like, all right. Well, that's not legit. Here's a problem. Then January 6th happened. I was like, okay. And all the persecution, all the military buildup for the inauguration and whatever else, all of the big tech censorship, all of these things tells me that, yeah, things are going downhill. Time to get out of Dodge. And doing it alone is not ideal for anyone. We are stronger together, working together with different people having different skills. And Josh and I probably talked for, 45 minutes, an hour. It was a while. And he's been thinking about this kind of stuff for a long time too. And as these things build up, of course, we'll be able to bring people in. Anyways, back to the text. Certainly, while he continues to manifest goodwill, one need fear no harm from a man who seems to be generally well disposed. But, oh good Lord, what strange phenomenon is this? What name shall we give it? What is the nature of this misfortune? What vice is it, or rather, what degradation? To see an endless multitude of people not merely obeying, but driven to servility. Not ruled, but tyrannicized over? These are interesting choices by the translator of word. These wretches have no wealth, no kin, nor wife, nor children, not even life itself, that they can call their own. Did you catch that? This is kind of interesting. We're seeing this now with obviously the left-wingers. These wretches have no wealth, no kin, nor wife, nor children, not even life itself, that they can call their own. And that seems to be very true about the useful idiots in the streets. Of course, most of them will never have wife or kin because they like little kids, but, there's that. They suffer plundering, wantonness, cruelty, not from an army, not from a barbarian horde, on account of whom they must shed their blood and sacrifice their lives, but from a single man. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. Trying not to burp into the mic. That's not very polite. Not from a Hercules, nor from a Samson, but from a single little man. Too frequently, this same little man is the most cowardly and effeminate in the nation. A stranger to the powder of battle and hesitant on the sands of the tournament. Not only without energy to direct men by force, but with hardly enough virility to bed with a common woman. That's a euphemism for a whore, by the way. She's common for a reason, right? A lot of guys know her. Women of that ilk back in those days, we're talking about, again, the 1500s, they might have lived off in the woods somewhere by themselves if they weren't in a brothel. But, you know, they would have visitors. That's how they survived. It's the oldest profession in the world, as they say. Even in the Bible, the Israelites are trying to sneak into the land of Canaan, and they, what is it? Was it Jericho? I think it was. Anyways, Joshua runs in. They get saved by the escape from the city guards because of a prostitute. A very common thing. I mean, prostitution is talked about all through the Bible. Anyways, shall we call subjection to such a leader cowardice? Also, realize this guy is in France, so there's that. Shall we say that those who serve him are cowardly and faint-hearted? If 2, if 3, if 4 do not defend themselves from the one, we might call that circumstance surprising, but nevertheless conceivable. In such a case, one might be justified in suspecting a lack of courage. But if 100 or if 1,000 endure the caprice of a single man, should we not rather say that they lack not the courage, but the desire to rise against him? Sounds like something Don says. You don't want to do it. People on the right don't want to rise up. People on the left are rising up. And folks, rising up for the right isn't nothing. It isn't anything. It's just little things like what's going on around the corner in Loudoun County, Virginia. In Loudoun County, Virginia, where these locals are standing up to the school board and the wokeness in it. Standing up starts locally, and you cannot focus on the federal government. Those despots, they're going to do what they do. You can only focus on your state and your community and hope to protect yourself from those things. Get good people in there. I told Michael, I messaged him, emailed him the other day. I think I'm going to help him, or not help him, but Michael Sisko, who I guess is a veteran and an Orthodox Christian, is running in West Virginia. Now, I don't think he's in my district, but I'm still going to try, if I can, to provide him with some help. So this, again, is all things that we need to do. Now, again, that's for Congress, so it is national elections, and I don't care so much about that. But still, if there's a chance that we can get a godly man in and perhaps change things up. I mean, we have this weird thing with Joe Manchin here in West Virginia, and I don't know why West Virginians keep voting for him other than there's an old blue dog Democrat kind of feel here, and that's why the state's turned very red. And I played a video some time ago of this chick that was running back with the last election, who was basically the AOC of West Virginia. And it is just like totally cringe stuff. She wanted to get rid of like right to work. Like, you're basically telling the folks, when you say, I want to get rid of the right to work, you're saying, I don't want you to be able to work unless you know, the union steals your money. What a bunch of nonsense. It was a bunch of things, and then when you went on her page, it was all a bunch of Bernie bros. I'm pretty sure she got blown out. I mean, I don't even know why she thought she was going to do anything in West Virginia, but she's down in the Capitol. She played some video about some lady whose business went under because of some government mismanagement. Well, great. That doesn't mean you need to provide a bunch of welfare to everybody. She was also trying to get it so any coal that came out of West Virginia to any other state was going to be like taxed or something, and that money was going to come directly to the people in the state. And I was like, what? You can't even do that constitutionally. Like, you can't have things like taxes between your resources on other states. Like, what are you talking about? Anyways. But she wanted that. She's like, they've been stealing our coal forever. It's like, okay, I don't think they're stealing our coal. People mine it, and they use it because people need power, and people get paid for it. Like our current governor, who's a billionaire because he owns a bunch of coal mines. In any case, where did I leave off here? Let me check on the chat real quick. Make sure. I see YouTube is quiet. Nothing on entropy. I got Ashley Babbitt was a false flag. Okay. Over on D Live, I got not a globe. The last link will work. All right. Well, I don't know. I'll have to check it out. I don't necessarily understand why that would be a false flag. Yeah, I know you're listening, Shelly. I can see who's watching. Or not, you particularly. I can see I have several people watching. But guys, if you are watching and you haven't yet, please hit that like button if you're new here and you're enjoying this content so far, or you've called my stuff before and you haven't yet, please subscribe, right? Share this out too, guys, if you think what I'm saying is important. If you like my ideas, please help the channel grow. I want these things to expand. I'm not expecting to be some sort of big-time YouTuber or anything like that. That's not really the purpose of this. But it is good to grow the channel. One of the things that growing the channel does as well is give me some clout to get some people on. That, a lot of times you'll email people and they're just like, who's this guy? And I'll try and send them the links to the show or whatever. This one and the Justify the Memes. And they don't know who you are. They don't necessarily respond back. But sometimes they do. It's, it depends on the individual. It's like Adam Friended I talked to because I wanted him to come on and talk about MMT, modern monetary theory, and this thing he had with a friend of his on air, which was gross. He got really upset because this guy said he was all right, and to Adam that was pretty offensive. So, yeah. Adam said, well, I'm busy with the comics and da-da-da-da. But if I was a bigger channel, it makes you wonder, would he go, well, I'm busy with the comics, I don't have a lot of time, but I can give you a half hour, right? So, anyways, just saying. It's helpful. Also, if you guys want to donate, you can do that through DLive, of course. And Entropy. And in any case, let's get back to the text. Where did I leave off is the question. When not 100, not 1,000 men, but 100 provinces, 1,000 cities, 1,000,000 men refuse to assail a single man from whom the kindest treatment received is the infliction of serfdom and slavery, what shall we call that? Is it cowardice? We're about to hit that, guys, with the inflation. And it's true. Is it cowardice? Are you a coward? Are you afraid? Or are you just trying to go along to get along? Well, that's what we're going to get into here. Of course, there is in every vice inevitably some limited beyond which one cannot go. 2, possibly 10, may fear 1. But when 1,000, 1,000,000 men, 1,000 cities fail to protect themselves against the domination of one man, this cannot be called cowardly, for cowardice does not sink into such a depth any more than valor can be termed the effort of one individual to scale a fortress, to attack an army, to conquer a kingdom. What monstrous vice, then, is this which does not even deserve to be called cowardice? A vice which no term can be found vile enough, which nature herself disavows and our tongues refuse to name. Place on one side 50,000 armed men, and on the other side the same number. Let them join in battle, one side fighting to retain its liberty, the other to take it away. To which would you, at a guess, promise victory? Which men do you think would march more gallantly to combat those who anticipate as a reward their suffering, the maintenance of their freedom, or those who cannot expect any other prize for the blows exchanged than the enslavement of others? One side will have before its eyes the blessing of the past and the hope of similar joy in the future. Their thoughts will dwell less on the comparatively brief pain of battle. That is the brief pain of battle they're not worried about, right? Than on what they may have to endure forever, they, their children, and all their prosperity. Yeah, I really love when I start reading stuff like this because this is the stuff I'm thinking about, right? And I'm always talking about. And I've never read this, guys. I've told you that. So I'm really glad that I pulled this up. So he's saying, two armies of equal number, let's say equal skill, equal technology, are fighting against each other. Which one's going to win? The one on the side of liberty or the one on the side of despotism? And again, he's going to suss this out here. The other side has nothing to inspire it with courage except the weak urge of greed, which fades before danger and which can never be so keen. It seems to me that it will not be dismayed by the least drop of blood from wounds. Consider the justly famous battle of Miltiades and Leonidas and Themistocles, still fresh today in recorded history and in the minds of men as they had occurred but yesterday. Battles fought in Greece for the welfare of the Greeks and as an example to the world. What power do you think gave to such a mere handful of men not the strength but the courage to withstand the attack of a fleet of so vast that even the seas were burdened, and to defeat the armies of so many nations, armies so immense that their officers alone outnumbered the entire Greek force? What was it that the fact in those glorious days this struggle represented not so much a fight of Greeks against Persians as a victory of liberty over domination, of freedom over greed? And of course, he's talking about the battle at the Hot Gates of Thermopylae, the recently popularized by the movie 300, of course. So there's a couple footnotes here I actually want to read because it talks about this. And a lot of you don't know that the Battle of Marathon happened afterwards. They provided for that. There was a runner that came down, and what the Spartans did was they basically got the rest of the Greek city-states to realize, hey, we need to pull our heads out of our butt because there's an invading force coming, and we want to maintain the governments and the freedoms we've set up here. And we don't know the numbers. The numbers were probably exaggerated, but they say there was a million men against about the number was not 300 on the Greek side, folks. It was they had 1,000 men or something like that. It was 300 Spartans, though. They might have even had 10,000 men. I can't recall. 5,000, 10,000, something like that. So they did have a much larger number than just 300, but it was 300 Spartans. And that meant a lot because the Spartans were the cream of the crop of the warriors. They were like the special forces back in the day. So here it says, Athenian general died in 489 BC. Some of his battles, expeditions against the Scythians, the Lamans, the Emboros, the Marathon, where Darius the Persian was defeated. And that is Darius the Second, I think. I don't remember. A little rusty on this. King of Sparta died at Thermopylae in 480 BC, defending the pass with 300 loyal Spartans against Xerxes. Maybe it was Darius the First because he came after, Xerxes. So, but again, it wasn't just 300. There were the other Greeks that joined them. So that is a sort of a misnomer about this. Athenian statesman and general died 460 BC. Some of his battles, expeditions against the Aegean Isles, victory over Persians under Xerxes, and Salamis, at Salamis. I'm not a huge military history expert, guys, by the way. Not really an expert in anything. But I'm pretty good at a lot of things. So there you go. It amazes us to hear accounts of the valor that liberty arouses in the hearts of those who defend it. But who could believe of reports of what goes on every day among the inhabitants of some countries? Who could really believe that one man alone may mistreat 100,000 and deprive them of their liberty? I'm really interested here, this spurred to mind, if he's going to get into the concept that, I know this is about how people self-enslave, but this concept specifically, because we're seeing this problem where people they purposely want to self-enslave. They want to be taken care of. There aren't a lot of people who, or sorry, I shouldn't say that. There are a lot of people who want to live freely. There are a lot of people who want liberty, but there are a lot more active, vocal people who want enslavement. And we know that it's in the institutions, of course, because those same people who want enslavement, despite claiming to be victims, can only enslave us and enslave themselves via the institutions. That's why they work together. And the institutions, by certain, want you guys to be enslaved, that you're just a debt cattle to them. And as the inflation comes, the rich will become ultra rich while everyone else gets ultra poor, begins to starve. Riots will not just be on the BLM side, I can promise you that. Wait till next year, guys. It's really going to start hitting. And I know we're seeing it now, but I mean, next year it'll really start hitting. And then, depending on how these monetary policies go, especially if Joe Biden gets this budget passed, by 2024, the next presidency, we are going to, the next presidential administration, we are going to be in a world of hurt. And I wish it wasn't so, but it is. It just simply is. And then, perhaps we can get it back on track with, a good Republican, but most likely we'll just get another puppet candidate in there, Republican or Democrat, or a strongman will come, and people will call for it. And I don't mean Donald Trump. It's possible, but I don't mean Donald Trump. I mean a real strongman, like Joseph Stalin, Mao, Hitler, those kind of people. Who would credit such a report if he merely heard it without being present to witness the events? And if this condition occurred only in distant lands and were reported to us, which one among us would not assume the tale to be imagined or invented, and not really true? Obviously, there is no need of fighting to overcome the single tyrant. For he is automatically defeated in the country if the country refuses consent to its own enslavement. There we go. It is not necessary to deprive him of anything, but simply to give him nothing. There is no need that the country makes an effort to do anything for itself, provided it does nothing against itself. The other day I was talking to Commander Osis, who you guys might know in the chat, in the YouTube chat, that is. And we were chatting over on Discord, and I was watching the Adam Friended PSA Sitch video. I was watching the end of it of Will Reich, or whatever his name is, that talked to the critical race theorist people, and it was just really cringy. And so I covered this basically on Monday, and I wanted to say something about something that got brought up there in that conversation, and this kind of spurred that to mind again. And that here he's saying, obviously there is no need to fight to overcome the single tyrant, for he is automatically defeated if the country refuses consent to its own enslavement. It is not necessary to deprive him of anything, but simply to give him nothing. Now, all of this makes perfect sense to me. Something when I was watching Sitch and Adam was, I think it was Adam that said it, He's like, once you start reading a lot, you start to understand how how few ideas are very different, and how many of them are just so old. That's right. There's nothing new under the sun, folks. It's in the Bible. Go read Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes can be depressing, by the way, if you are not if you're not properly minded toward the book and understand the purpose of it. What he's saying is that everything is meaningless that you do, unless God is in your life. So that's the quick of it. But the saying is, there's nothing new under the sun. And the only thing really new for us is the technology. Our nature is exactly the same. These questions are exactly the same. These things that occur time and time again. And all I want to do is show you guys how you can access information and see where these things come from. There's a quote from a historian, I can't remember his name, but way back in 2010, I first got on Facebook. I used to keep it up, it's something along the lines of out of all the stupid things that humanity tries time and time again, or all the things that we try, it never ceases to amaze me how if you go back through history, you can see it failing time and time again, and yet they think it anew today. It's like Bastiat, and we will get over to Bastiat here in a little bit. It's like Bastiat going on and talking about the ancient ideas of socialism and from which they spring. He knew this. He understood this. You guys don't, because for the last, I don't know, probably 5 generations in the West, our history has been completely rewritten, removed, dissolved, and destroyed. For the last 3 generations, for sure. The greatest generation, though, and like a lot of people blame the boomers. In part, they didn't do so good, but it's because they lived in a lot of luxury and wealth. They really did. They had a very easy life, and their parents didn't. The parents kind of weren't involved as much as they should have been. You had the greatest generation, the silent generation before that come up, and they came up under the Depression. And I used to know, gentlemen, I would assume he's no longer with us, but I shoot pool with a gentleman. He's quite old. He was always quite healthy, but he was in his 80s, very healthy, very vibrant guy, and he grew up under in the Depression as a little kid, and he's like, if FDR didn't do those things, we all would have starved to death. And I'm thinking, Jack, you don't. That's absurd. They burned crops, they destroyed crops, and slaughtered millions of animals to prop up the prices of farming, which, in a way, is a way to inflate the prices, right? So people were starving and going to food kitchens. They could have afforded the animals if they were cheaper, but the government decided to keep those prices up to prop up the farms. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody who's going to make an economic. Well, the farms they needed that money, blah, blah, blah. Not necessarily. I know there were other factors like the Dust Bowl and other things that contribute to all this. But the point I'm making is that we've tried all these things, guys. I brought it up to you before, and I'll probably read some of this in the future of the book 40 Centuries of Wage and Price Control. 40 centuries. That's 4,000 years. That goes all the way back to Christ and around again. Like, what? We haven't figured this out? No, it's been figured out. It's been long figured out. It's just most people are so ignorant and so stupid, and they like slavery. They do. They like to be enslaved because they feel that they don't have to do anything at all. Give me, take care of me. It's like the portions of the inner city community, the black community specifically, complaining about reparations for slavery while basically being enslaved by the welfare system. You're not free. You're not free here, at least. You're definitely not free here. And I just don't understand it. I'm not built that way, guys. I am not built that way. I'm just a heterodox all the way. Hey, thanks for showing up, buddy. Let me check the chat real quick. Nope, nothing. I don't know. Not a Globe. You still watching? You just sending me stuff about, Ashley Babbitt was a false flag. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what false flag means, but how? What? Because if Ashley Babbitt were a false flag, the right would be fighting right now with, instead of everyone sitting at home going, man, how do we regroup and not be rounded up and thrown in the gulags like they did the people that walked through the Capitol building all peacefully and took selfies with the police. Let's see here. Who would credit such a report if he merely heard it without being present to witness the event? If this condition occurred only in distant lands and were reported to us, which one among us would not assume the tale to be imagined or invented or not really true? That's a good point. And often we see this with folks they don't understand. They say, it can't happen here. It's happening here right now. It's been happening for 100 years. You are willfully blind. You are suffering from a normalcy bias. You need to wake up. Obviously, there is no need to fighting to overcome this single tyrant, for he is automatically defeated if the country refuses consent to its enslavement. It is not necessary to deprive him of anything, but simply to give him nothing. There is no need that the country make any effort to do anything for itself, provided it does nothing against itself. It is therefore the inhabitants themselves who permit, or rather bring about, their own subjugation, since by ceasing to submit, they would put an end to their own servitude. But, and maybe he'll go here, but there are always those co-conspirators, those who are complicit. And folks, if you don't think that some cops are in positions through police because they don't like power, you again are suffering from a lack of understanding of human nature. A lot of cops are in those positions because they like power. I don't like those cops. I don't like people like that. I don't, because I don't like bullies. I want somebody who does their job and who does it judiciously and who makes calls about what is right and what is wrong. And when you take an oath to the Constitution, which you do if you work for law enforcement, you ought to take it pretty seriously instead of enforcing executive orders, which are not laws, they are edicts. Yet these cops do it. And a lot of cops are leaving. But they should have been doing this a long time ago. But again, the point is demoralization. And then you just get that cop. You get that cop that'll do anything anyone says. It's like the mafioso thug. They like brawling. They like arresting people. They think that they're morally just. Might makes right, folks. Might makes right. A people enslave itself, cut its own throat when having a choice between being vessels and being free vassals, that is, and being free men. Excuse me, I had to clear my throat there a little bit. It deserts its liberties and takes on the yoke, gives consent to its own misery, or rather, apparently welcomes it. If it costs the people anything to recover its freedom, I should not urge action to this end, although there is nothing a human should hold more clear than the restoration of his own natural right. To change himself from a beast of burden back to a man, so to speak. I do not demand of him so much boldness. Let him prefer the doubtful security of living wretchedly to the uncertain hope of living as he pleases. What then? If in order to have liberty, nothing more is needed than to long for it, if only a simple act of the will is necessary, is there any nation in the world that considers a single wish too high a price to pay in order to recover rights which ought to be ready to redeem at the cost of its blood? Rights such that their loss must bring all men of honor to the point of feeling life to be unendurable and death itself a deliverance. Let's go through that again. If it costs the people anything to recover its freedom, I should not urge action to this end. So he's saying it doesn't cost you anything. Just stop obeying. Stop complying. Although there is nothing a human should hold more dear than the restoration of his own natural rights, to change himself from a beast of burden back to a man. That is, now in this debt slavery system. Just don't be a part of it. Obviously, the IRS will come and take you away. But wouldn't that be funny if every American decided they weren't going to pay their taxes? What would the IRS do then? But see, that's the problem. You won't get enough people to unify to do such a thing. We live in fear because they have all the guns. This is also why you're not taking away my gun. I do not demand of him so much boldness. Let him prefer the doubtful security of living wretchedly to the uncertain hope of living as he pleases. What then? If in order to have liberty, nothing more is needed than to long for it, if only a simple act of the will is necessary, is there any nation in the world that considers a single wish too high a price to pay in order to recover rights it ought to be ready to redeem at the cost of its blood? Well, we saw that here in America. And who knows, maybe the founders knew of this book. I just recently became aware of it. Everyone knows that the fire from a little spark will increase the blaze ever higher as long as it finds wood to burn. Yet without being quenched by water, but merely by finding no more fuel to feed on, it consumes itself and dies down, and is no longer a flame. So, the analogy, of course, here is that how's the government going to run if it can't extract resources? Hey, Sam. I saw Thane, and I saw him say hi to you, but I didn't say hi to you myself, so I just realized. Appreciate you being here, as always. Especially, I know it's a little bit later there. It says, similarly, the more tyrants pillage, the more they carve, the more they ruin and destroy, the more one yields to them and obeys them. By that much, do they become mightier and more formidable? The readier to annihilate and destroy? But if not one thing is yielded to them, if without any violence they are simply not obeyed, they become naked and undone and as nothing, just as when the root receives no nourishment, the branch withers and dies. Yep, sure does. I'm going to leave it there, guys. We're on page 45. Let me write that down real quick. 45 of 80, so we will get through this. This won't be that hard to get through. Rothbard just had to run his mouth for 30 pages. Rothbard, by the way, in my opinion, guys, not 100%, but a lot of Austrians and whatever prop him up. But the Rothbard group of libertarianisms, I think, where the law libertarians come out at and they get into all kinds of crazy stuff like no intellectual property rights and whatever else. Like I said, I don't understand how you can be an atheist and believe in anarcho-capitalism like that's going to work. Completely devoid of understanding of human nature, and I just don't. I lack respect for folks that just don't understand. That are intellectuals that don't understand how human beings function historically and always. They don't understand basic psychology. They don't understand philosophy. They don't understand religious motivations. It's strange to me. Well, Thane, I think I said hi to you. I didn't say hi to Sam, but yeah, it's fine. You guys are mostly listening. I get that. Um, unless you got a crush on me or something, there's no reason to look at me. um, the I like to have the text up here though, so you can read along, of course. And especially since on occasion, I will misspeak. I'll misread something. I'm going to play some Heaven on Earth, guys. Not for too long, just a little segment of it. I am looking for something else for us to watch since it's over. Everything wrong with the 6 shooting in 21 minutes or less. This is the video that Not a Globe sent me over on D Live. I'll come back and watch that later. Maybe. By the way, folks, if you want, you can follow me over on D Live. And you can donate there, as well as Entropy. More than anything, most importantly, give me a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, because, well, I want to grow. I want to grow the channel. And it's really hard to grow right now in the age of YouTube censorship. Veritas just released a video, well, several videos, that's how James gets down, of how Facebook is censoring factual information or any little anecdote about people in the jab and how they might have a bad reaction. And I saw this the other day, a report about on Instagram. Someone posted a meme about bad reactions, and right away there was a disclaimer warning. I took a screenshot of it, and the point of it was, be aware that the vaccine efficacy is important because this is how we fight the pandemic. That everyone needs to get it because this is how we fight the pandemic. And it's like, well, what if more people in the end die because of your rushed experimental, thing? Be careful with my language here a little bit. I really was not ever wanting to do such a thing here on YouTube, but I don't know with the wave of purgings what they're going to do or not. There's a couple of videos of mine I thought about unlisting or privating, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to take the strike when it comes. When they find something I did a year ago that they didn't like, and everything I've said, by the way, when it comes to this subject has been 100% accurate. 100%. I don't think I've gotten a single thing wrong on it since last year. So, I don't know. It's almost like logic and reason and evidence always seems to be right. It's weird. Weird how that works. All right, let me get this up here. Should already be queued up. I'm probably going to drop the volume down on it a little bit, guys, because it's always way overpowered. And in fact,
A one-time frontman for a band called the Ugly Rumors, Tony himself came to politics only at the end of his college years.
He was a rebel, but he was quite a careful rebel. But there was also a much quieter side to him. I mean, he became a confirmed Christian at Oxford University with a passionate belief in social justice and left-wing political values.
Blair won his first Parliament seat in 1983. He was just 30 years old. But he was bucking the national tide.
Margaret Hilda Thatcher, Conservative Party...
Labour's fortunes were near the lowest point ever.
616.
And the party ticket was trumped by the Conservatives.
There was this sense that the different traditions that made up the Labour Party had been tried, failed, and that tradition therefore exhausted itself. So people like Blair, in a sense, had reason to think that they should remake the party from top to bottom.
57%.
In 1994, Labour leader John Smith died of a heart
I
attack.
therefore declare that Tony Blair is elected leader of the Labour.
The party turned to Blair.
This man, our new leader, has got what it takes. He commands moral authority and political respect. He has the energy and vitality to win people over to Labour. And he scares the life out of the Tories. And me.
Oh, this is a very exciting time, and there was a crusading sort of zeal to him and the key advisors around him, which was very exciting, but it was also worrying at times in terms of his ability to take the party with him at all times. I think that was best captured by the day that Tony Blair somewhat bellicosely announced at the Labour Party conference that he was prepared to embark on a review of the Constitution, or as he called it, our aims and values.
Let us say what we mean and mean what we say. Stop saying what we don't mean and start saying what we do mean, what we stand by, what we stand for.
The words may have been cryptic, but everyone in the Labour Party knew what Blair was talking about. Clause 4, the part of the Labour Party's charter that committed it to common ownership. Blair wanted to make clear to voters that the party no longer believed in this kind of socialism.
It is not the socialism of Marx or state control. We are the party of the individual because we are the party of community. It is socialism.
But Clause 4 had been around since 1918, and many in the Labour Party were not willing to give it up without a fight.
Clause 4 is a totemic thing. It's an icon. And people don't like those things being fiddled around with. It's like trying to change the prayer book in the Church of England. It causes all kinds of controversy.
The following year, Labour delegates gathered at Methodist Central Hall in Westminster, where the original Clause 4 was adopted 77 years before, to vote on Blair's new language.
For the new Clause 4, 65.23% against
65% were in favor.
When Blair convinced the party to do away with the traditional socialist language of Clause 4, what was in its place was pure double talk, and you can read it over and over again without figuring out exactly what it's saying. But the meaning of that double talk became clear in action when Blair then started running for prime minister and leading the Labour Party in a new campaign, and the policies that he was advocating in the campaign were anything but socialist policies.
Now, what do you think, then, the relationship should be between the trade union and the Labour government?
Fairness, not favours. We're also putting forward proposals as to how we can involve the private sector as well as the public sector. It is a welfare-to-work budget.
What seemed to be essential for Tony Blair and New Labour was to create the impression of being a safe pair of hands. And the approach really boils down to several things. First, distancing the Labour Party from the trade unions. Second, appealing to middle-class swing voters who otherwise were voting conservatives. And finally, and most generally, making peace with the business world, with the British markets, and with capitalism.
Even those business people that aren't supporting Labour now know they've got a Labour Party that supports enterprise, that supports business.
As the 1997 general election approached, Blair's strategy seemed to be working. By the evening of May the 2nd, 1997, the votes had been counted. Labour rolled to its largest win ever, even topping Attlee's record victory in 1945.
All over this country, there were people that were crying out for a sensible, mainstream, moderate alternative to the Conservative Party. Today, enough of talking. It is time now to do. Thank you.
Blair easily won re-election in 2001. But his policies led many to wonder whether the Labour Party was still a socialist party.
Yeah, the Labour Party is a socialist party. The only problem is these days we're not so sure what socialism is. It's a socialist party in the sense that it stands for a conception of society and community and people owing obligations to each other, and stands for what I said was that core belief about giving everybody in society access to things that that society can offer. That, I think, is the core idea. And I think if you look at many of the programs that we're engaged in, you can still define them by that core idea.
The Prime Minister would say that New Labour was a redefinition of socialism. I believe it's a rejection of socialism. I believe that many things in the Labour Party's policy needed to change to meet the demands of the modern world, but I thought we ought to hold tight to our basic principles and see how those basic principles could be applied in the modern world. The Prime Minister has abandoned the basic principles.
Socialist or not, Blair's approach was catching on. Eventually, as many as 14 social democratic heads of state from Europe, South Africa, and New Zealand embraced similar policies. As they talked about the importance of inclusion and a social safety net, they increasingly acknowledged the necessity for capitalism. The triumph of free enterprise was the theme at the first annual Capitalist Ball in Brussels. Revelers from around the world gathered on the floor of the Belgian Stock Exchange to celebrate capitalism. The day before the ball, some of the people here got together to look at the future of socialism.
Ladies and gentlemen, comrades. Oh no, sorry, you're the wrong audience for that.
The conclusion was anything but an obituary.
Socialism will not die, but it will surely change into something else.
And I would argue that today socialism, after the failed experiment of the Soviet Union, has gone back to some of its 9th century features as an anti-establishment.
I don't believe that socialism is dead because I don't believe that the impulse which drives people towards the left, the desire to control, meddle and interfere in other people's lives, can ever die.
Liberty is always under threat, and socialism is one of those threats. And yet there's something dynamic and moral in the heart of socialism as well. It's that ambiguity that keeps the thing alive, and it makes it always a danger.
At the 21st Annual Socialist Scholars Conference in New York City, a very different view prevailed.
we think that the break of the Soviet Union and the fall of the wall affected all the left. Social Democrats, because they lose some reference to build some model of regulation.
You don't go from what you've got to what you desire like that. You have to win a series of changes.
It's a mistake to equate the failure of particular socialist parties and regimes with the failure of socialism or the end of socialist values or vision.
Isn't this what they always say? Well, that wasn't real socialism. No, it was. It was exactly real socialism. It was utterly destructive. It was totalitarian and 100% real socialism. How are you going to get around the basic economics of this stuff? But the problem is these folks don't believe in natural law. They don't believe in laws of nature. They don't believe in the basic tenets of us living in a flesh material being that has a nature within itself. So I say that they're morons because that's like, I know some of them are, what is it called? Some of them are intellectual idiots. They're so smart that they're stupid. They've overthought things so much, they can't understand the first principles of it. And yes, I know Sam caught this, but by the way, I accidentally clicked on the wrong scene and an old segment of mine came up for a second. Something I only ran twice and then took down because it wasn't working for me. And I'll show you guys that here in a bit if you want to see.
They're a reflection of the fact that they were trying to build institutions at a certain point in time in a certain part of the world. And it was to be expected, given the dynamism and power of capitalism as a system, that the first attempts to build institutions to overthrow it would not be the perfect ones. And I'm sure that we'll see over the course of the next century loads of attempts to build new ones, new parties, new unions, new movements that will be socialist in their fundamental.
New destruction, new death, new poverty. All coming to a country near you.
Essence that will learn from the mistakes of the past.
A non-reformist reform is to fight for these kinds of changes and many others in a manner.
A non-reformist reform? Gobbledygook. All right.
Which leaves us, when we win, not going home, but desiring more.
Many at the conference said the anti-globalization and anti-war movements may hold the seeds of socialism's future. But some believe the idea might not always go by the same name.
A lot of people, when they hear that label, they immediately reject it. Oh, socialism, I've been taught that that's wrong. So I don't necessarily feel the need to use that label. I mean, I like the term economic democracy. I think that's a fantastic term because I think that's the way people can start to think about it. We need to start extending democracy to the sphere of economics.
Here and elsewhere, there seem to be no...
Democracy's stupid. Doesn't work unless you like to be enslaved by the majority. Sorry. Dumb.
No shortage of arguments that socialist ideas can still play a vital role in politics.
If you look at what some of the market ideologues were saying at the time the wall came down at the end of the 1980s, and their victory dances were so exaggerated that they were very much, seemed to me, like the Marxists of old, who thought they had sort of cracked the secret of history. But of course you don't crack the secret of history because you find it throws up new problems for you. The market won in that sense, insofar as there was no organised alternative to it. Hadn't won in the sense that the choice had not been removed as to whether you want a market economy or whether you want to extend that into a market society.
I'm going to leave that lay there, guys. So here's the problem with that even statement, and he's trying to say that the socialists were, they're being stupid, right? Let's keep it simple. But the problem is simple as this: the market economy is just the thing. It's just how we exchange whatever. There's no overthinking this. You do labor, you produce stuff, you exchange it. It is just how it works. Animals, in many ways, have their own form of economies. Right? We work together as social beings, but those of us who work harder and those of us who are generally more intelligent end up having more than those who are lazy and stupid. And I know I'm breaking this down overly simplistic, but it is the reality. It is just how it goes, guys. There are folks who will never work that hard. In fact, right now, I have a very good friend who has a girlfriend that you know, might not last too much longer, but I have no idea. But she just has no motivation or drive to work, and she's not that intelligent. So it's like he's stuck with having to take care of her, and that's not his responsibility. Now, if he wants to, if he chooses to, that's fine, but you know, he's getting frustrated with it. She won't maintain a whole job for forever and for very long. And frankly, I find some of the stuff she does manipulative, but either way, whatever. His choice, his life. But this is just the reality of people. And socialists, you start talking to them, and they don't know this. They have no clue about this. They think, oh, sure. Yeah, no, yeah, okay. There's stupid people. Sure, Bill. That's the reason why socialism won't work, because these people, you don't think everyone wants to work? No, I do not. I do not. I'm doing this as work. I'm not really making any money, right? That's not the point of this. But I'm not working right now as far as outside of the home for good reasons, very good reasons that my wife and I discussed and talked about. What happens in the end, in fact, I'll just show you. I got a meme about this. I will show you the meme. Where's my folder? Get this bad boy up. 1920s Soviet poster. He who does not work, neither shall he eat. That's a direct quote from Paul the Apostle, actually. Sounds reasonable. Sounds reasonable. That is the communist and the fascist. And then you have Voldemort. No! Literally slavery. You can't force people to work. Luxury. And, of course, today's elitist sounds reasonable. Socialism is slavery, guys. Socialism is simply slavery. If you're not allowed to own property, guess what class of people was never really allowed to own property or have a limited cap on the property that they could own? I've rebranded socialism as something normies will interpret as a good thing. Yeah, that's a good one, Sam. It's pretty much what he said. Unfortunately, it sounds like some girls I dated. Yes. Yeah, well, see, women are, today, modern women are stuck in this thing where they're, we're breeding whores, guys. I mean, I guess I'm just going to be pretty blunt today. We are breeding prostitutes. We are encouraging women be nothing more than sexual objects, despite all the feminism and the sexual liberation. And we're teaching them and telling them that they are men, which they are not, of course. In any case, just for your viewing entertainment, if you guys want to see real quick, this was a segment, Things Redditors Say, that I scrapped because I thought it would be more funny, but it's just kind of maddening and stupid, and it makes me want to blow my brains out, and I just can't look at Reddit that much. And I end up saving too many things, and I was like, all right, I need to collect memes. I need to do stuff around the house. I need to do whatever for the show here. I can't do this. So, but yeah, I'll show you real quick what that was. Things Redditors Say. So I have all these scenes on here. I worked really hard on that too. Worked really hard on that intro. The little voice manipulation there. Got a little audio program. But that's me. I'm constantly coming up with ideas. I get bored with stuff. It's the curse of being open and creative, or I should say open and intelligent on top of it, because if I wasn't, I probably wouldn't be as creative, but it's like I'm always, squirreling out one way or another. So let's read some Bastiat before I get out of here. Just check on everyone everywhere else. I think I need to put some, I'll work on my DLive channel and put some links and stuff in there. But this is where it's at right now, is the YouTubes. So guys, once again, if you haven't, please like, share, subscribe. Help me grow. If you want to donate, Entropy is available, as well as DLive. Those of you that are on the YouTubes. Eventually, once Entropy is up and running, I will probably do YouTube content as well. But I mean, Entropy's running on its own. I will probably do very exclusive content over there because I like the platform. And I will do what you guys were just talking about in the chat, like Yiz is talking about. I've had this idea too. I kind of don't want to give it away, but I will, because, I'm a generous person. Where I kind of want to cut videos, short little videos of like our show, not this one, but the Ends Justify the Memes, and just put up like commercials. Like, why? No one does YouTube commercials. Why is that? It's weird. I mean, Trump did it, did he not, during the presidency? But no one like makes little commercials for their show. It's weird. So I thought about doing that. Just haven't gotten around to it. Maybe I'll screw around with that while I'm dealing with the little one once she gets here. So we were at dictatorial arrogance from my notes from from Monday, I guess. It was the last time we were here. And we should be getting through this pretty soon. Oh, you did YouTube Shorts? Yeah, I mean, I'll get on there. Obviously, like, there's the community thing. I don't really know how well that works. I know people use it. I see it all the time in my feed on my phone. And what I find is that I end up reading the messages 3 days after they put them out, or a week afterward. So that's why I made, little videos. Anytime I make a little video from my phone to announce something, I'd rather just do that. It seems easier to me. If I title them right, I get a lot of traffic. Well, yeah, that's kind of the idea. I bet it is easy, Holly, but I don't like sitting in front of the computer. I'm only doing this because, I'm trying to run my mouth and have you guys listen. I'm a mover. If you guys couldn't tell, when I josculate all over the place all the time, I can't sit still. I need to be standing or doing something physical. I don't like sitting around. And the only time I really do is like if I'm going to sit down to read or something, and I'm moving and adjusting myself quite a bit. Well, I would love your help. You can help me out, of course. You're going to be my co-host. Interestingly, though, Holly, the show might get canceled. The shows that we're supposed to do, because if my wife goes on her due date or right before it, might not be able to do the show. But we'll find out. We'll see. It is what it is. But I would like you, I really do appreciate your voice, and I would like to have you around on the Ends Justify the Memes a little more often if you are available. But we can work that out behind the scenes. Dollhawk says my shorts will get me banned from YouTube. They're too short. Rhodesian shorts. You should, UDT shorts, buddy. UDT shorts. That's the, underwater demolition teams. There's a little, if you Google them, I'll just do it for you guys real quick. Maybe I'll get some guys, some buds guys running around. You can check out their glutes. They're like Thomas Lennon and, yeah, these guys. Oh, yeah. Thomas Lennon and Reno 911. What in the world is that thing? Yeah. Look at this man. That's a man in those shorts. Woo! That looks like a 240. 240 golf. Shoulder fired. Oh, okay, you're a Navy guy. All right, yeah. I was this close to being a swim instructor, but I had the rating to do it for the Marine Corps, and then I was on ship for 6 months, and we, did almost nothing but operations or whatever, and I couldn't work out on the ship. I'd start doing pull-ups, I do one, I go way over the bar, and then the next one you're like, ah! It's just crazy. So I got lazy on ship, and I went to go swim, and I did not have the skills that I had before. I had to regain. There he is. There's old Thomas. Yeah. All right. No, Ranger panties, that's an Army thing. They're called silkies in the Marines, but not the same thing as UDT shorts. Rhodesian brush stroke. Oh, okay. Let me see if I can find a pair of those. This is not at all what I thought I'd be doing for the show, but there we go. Yeah. These look a little long, man. It's looking a little gay. It's a little bit too long. There we go. Oh, I see. This is what you got going. I gotcha. Look at this guy. That's a hard charger right there. That's a stupid kit setup, though. You don't put a why would you have a canteen underneath your armpit? Okay. Look at he's manly, man. Good Lord. You know what's insane? Like, the military does make these concessions and stuff to do this. And they do it now. Like, guys won't wear their tops. They'll just wear a t-shirt and whatever. When I was in Iraq, I used to get yelled at because I rolled my sleeves up like 2 rolls. My CO used to yell at me, and I'm like, dude, it's 130 degrees out. The sun's blaring. You know? Well, yeah, you gotta be tough. It's like, yeah, if I fall out too from heat cramps or whatever, you're not gonna like that. Especially if we have to actually fight. Yeah, buddy. Look at these guys. All right, that's enough of this nonsense. It's supposed to be a very, very serious show. Very serious show. All right. To Bastiat and the law and dictatorial arrogance. Let's see. I can probably stay on. I think I can stay on till about 5:30ish. Let's just read through this as much as I can, and maybe we'll get through it, and I can start bringing up some more stuff. Well, of course, we're going to come back to the politics of obedience on Monday. And in case you guys didn't know, the Incestify the Memes will be running Sunday. I am not good with like dates and stuff. So Tank told me he couldn't do last week. I think it's because it was Pentecost, and I didn't even know until I went to Bible study with my parents. I don't keep track of Pentecost and Lent and all that. I don't even know when Easter or Passover. By the way, the first division between the East and the Western Church, really big division, was over that. Perhaps I'll go through some history, church history here in the future. But yeah, we will be there, and we'll run through all the memes we didn't get through the other day. So we will do that, and maybe have some people call in. As I get home and I can watch you start looking at booty shorts, yeah. Yeah. I'd rather look at the opposite sex wearing them, but it's not good for my soul to do that either, given my proclivity to certain behaviors. But in any case, dictatorial arrogance. At what a tremendous height above the rest of mankind does Robespierre here place himself. And note the arrogance with which he speaks. He is not content to pray for a great reawakening of the human spirit, nor does he expect such a result from a well-ordered government. No, he himself will remake mankind, and by means of terror. This is so much easier to read. Just saying. I don't know why that other one was translated so difficultly. It might actually be the author, but also dark mode. Dark mode is huge for me. My eyes are very light sensitive. So if you remember, we read this passage before. This was the last thing I think we left off on. The principles of the Republican government is virtue. This is from Robespierre. And the means required to establish virtue is terror. And this is leftism, guys. It's what they believe. They believe in molding. And perhaps if we got away from that, we could go back to terminology like Peterson uses instead of left and right or whatever. We could say the social constructionist, because really that's what it's about. It's really about the authoritarian social constructionist and the liberty-minded people, or the people that want more liberty. And frankly, there are shades of that, of course. But right now, I'm not looking to be overly specific with folks, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? I'm not here to debate your certain kind of right-wing republicanism or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to express my ideas, my beliefs. I'm going to tell you about how I see these things, and hopefully we can find some common ground, but more importantly, not argue amongst ourselves and actually get something done. This is the biggest problem with libertarians. They never get anything done. And I know, like, the majority of the people I know in DC are, that work in these orgs and stuff are libertarian type people. And almost none of them were Trump supporters. Some of them were, but it's like, what do you want? You're not going to win with Joe Jorgensen. If you let the left win, what's going to happen? And you should know, if you're in those systems, how ridiculous our government is when they go, well, but Trump did this, Trump did that. And some of his policies were not great. Okay. What do you think is going to happen when Joe Biden gets in? Well, we're seeing that now, aren't we? It's going really good. Got a great economy here right now. Awesome, massive inflation coming. Granted, that was under the Trump administration, but Trump doesn't dictate to the Federal Reserve in any way, shape, or form. No one does. And I've had people, but did they have a congressional oversight board? Dude, shut up. Like, you can have whatever vestigial board you want. It doesn't mean anything. It's useless. It's functionless. It's there for show. They don't dictate anything to the Fed. The Fed does what the Fed wants, and the Fed exchanges money. They bail people out all across the globe. They do whatever, and they destroy our economy, our way of life. Big old Ponzi scheme. All right, I'm going to quit running my mouth. This mess of rotten and contradictory statements is extracted from a discourse by Robespierre, in which he aims to explain the principles of morality, which ought to guide a revolutionary government. Note that Robespierre's request for dictatorship is not made merely for the purpose of repelling a foreign invasion or putting down the opposing group. I am not a fan, we kind of went over this before. I understand the idea of having a strong leader for military battles, a general, if you would. But as I explained to you earlier, I actually prefer a decentralized command in every way, and that bottom-up scaling instead of the top-down. So the argument to give over some sort of emergency powers or anything like that, I don't agree with that. I think that that's just silly. That's just a means for someone to use an excuse. Remember when they were... remember people kept talking about Trump and martial law and all this other stuff? None of that happened. What do you think... I don't know. What do you think's going on of sorts down in D.C. and they still have troops there? Pretty sure they do. I don't know. My wife has something to do, so I might down in D.C. here soon. So I might have to go with her. We haven't been down there in over a year, even though it's an hour away. And she would tell me, she'd be like, "Oh, can we go down? I want to go down and see this friend or that friend." Oh no, we're not going to D.C., honey. We're not going. Sorry. Do you understand what's going on right there, down there right now? Don't want nothing to do with it. Note that Robespierre's request for dictatorship is not made merely for the purpose of repelling a foreign invasion or putting down the opposing groups. Rather, he wants a dictatorship in order that he may use terror to force upon the country his own principles of morality. He says that this act is only to be a temporary measure preceding a new constitution. But in reality, he desires nothing short of using terror to extinguish from France selfishness, honor, customs, manners, fashion, vanity, love of money, good companionship, integrity, wit, seriousness, and poverty. Not until he, the God King, Robespierre, shall have accomplished these miracles, as he so rightly calls them, will he permit the law to reign again. It's always true. And again, when your children don't read these things, they don't understand the history, they will call for these things as well. And I'm very keen on, of course, letting people discover things on their own. Letting children discover things on their own. They have to learn their own lessons. But we have an interesting education system where they ask you to write specific things about specific, they're like, in an essay like this, they might say, explain to me how Bastiat was wrong. Right? And it's like, I don't think he's wrong. Right, but I'm trying to teach you critical thinking and how to argue from the other side. Well, I don't need to, because Bastiat is arguing from the other side within his essay. And this is the kind of stuff we do. Instead, what we should be doing is saying, here's an example of all the reasons why, and tell me if you agree or disagree with all of his reasons, and let's go through point by point or whatever it is. But we don't do that. It's a really weird thing. We tend to say, it has to do with control and indoctrination, but they tend to go, well, tell me about this part of it. Tell me why he's wrong, so you can learn to critically think. Well, I don't need to critically think when he's actually doing it within the text. Now, I can analyze it like I'm doing now. I can add to it. I can accent certain things. But it is quite strange to me. In any case, I digress. At this point in the original French text, Mr. Bastiat pauses and speaks thusly to all do-gooders and would-be rulers of mankind. Ah, you miserable creatures! You who think that you are so great, you who judge humanity to be so small, you who wish to reform everything, why don't you reform yourselves? That task would be sufficient enough. That sounds like Jordan Peterson. Clean your room. And when he says that, the lefties hate it. They do. I don't have to fix myself. I don't have to fix myself. Society's problem. Is it? Or are you perhaps an arrogant person with delusional beliefs? I'm not saying there aren't societal problems, but the societal problems I see come from you. People like you who refuse to take care of yourself and want everyone to take care of you, and you think that society is wrong because they don't take care of you. Because you can only think about you. And guys, I'm telling you, every problem in your life, there are very few problems in your life that are external. Obviously, the government is an external problem, but they don't tend to affect you too much other than, the inflation and the taxing. So the economic stuff, of course. But directly, you're not really experiencing those things, experiencing the laws that they pass. Again, it's only the economics of things that are really are impactful to most people. But the reality is all your problems in life are your problems. And you need to look in the mirror and start digging deep and understanding that you have issues that you need to correct. Or you need to understand your weaknesses better and your strengths better. I embrace my weakness because in my infirmities, the Lord lifts me up. But that's my perspective. I have that. Not everyone does. The bottom line is that I came to that place because I knew that the problem with me in my life was me. And I knew that I was drawing things to me because of me. Let's keep moving. Holly says, yes, because you know who else liked tidiness and order? I'll give you a hint. He had a small mustache. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is people assume that because you like orderliness to some degree, I'm a pretty orderly person. I'm not hyper industrious. I'm like, mid-level, but orderliness I am actually very high on. My wife is not so much, so I get agitated by things a lot. In fact, I fussed her earlier today, and I was like, because she had a can of her sparkling water in the hallway, and I moved it to the pantry, and she's like looking for it. She's like, where'd it go? And I said, I moved it to the pantry because we're not white trash leaving soda out in the middle, or whatever, it's water, it's sparkling water, out in the middle of the hallway. It belongs in a pantry. And she's like, I know, I just, she's like, I couldn't bend down and get it. And I was like, that's fine, honey, whatever, because she had been leaving it in the garage. I'm like, but we have a pantry. Go put it in the pantry. And I have been around a lot of that kind of trashy people that live in chaotic, disorderly places. And I've been in those places in my life where my bedroom's been an explosion or whatever else in the house, and you put it off and you see it, and it literally psychologically terrorizes you. The disorder in your life. And most of the time, you're psyching yourself out and going, man, that's such a massive task I have to take on to get that cleaned. And you do it. It takes 15 minutes or maybe an hour. It's, but the less orderly you are in your life, the more chaos that there is, the more your psychology will suffer. I promise. Your spirit will dwindle greatly. And that is what's going on with the majority of these folks. There are multiple levels to it, but yes, they live disorderly lives. Charlie Chaplin. We've all seen the Charlie Chaplin play the small mustache man, right? But he was a good leader then. In any case, usually, however, these gentlemen, the reformers, the legislators, and the writers in public affairs, do not desire to impose direct despotism upon mankind. Oh no, they are too moderate and philanthropic for such direct action. Instead, they turn to the law for this despotism, this absolutism, this omnipotence. They desire only to make the laws. To show the prevalence of this queer idea in France, I would need to copy not only the entire works of Malby, Raynal, Rousseau, and Fenelon, plus long extracts from Bossuet and Montesquieu, but also the entire proceedings of the convention. I shall do no such thing. I merely refer the readers to them. It says Napoleon wanted a passive mankind. It is, of course, not at all surprising that these same ideas should have greatly appealed to Napoleon. He embraced it ardently and used it with vigor. Like a chemist, Napoleon considered all Europe to be material for his experiments. But in due course, his material reacted against him. At St. Helena, Napoleon, greatly disillusioned, seemed to recognize some initiative in mankind. Recognizing this, he became less hostile to liberty. Nonetheless, this did not prevent him from leaving this lesson to his son in his will. To govern is to increase the spread, morality, education, and happiness. No, no, and no. Only if you are an arrogant SOB and you think you are God. Morality is not in the realm of government, folks. And I know there are some people that will go, yeah, of course it is. They make the laws. That's the whole point. No, the laws are so you are not plundered by your neighbor. The laws are to protect your rights. That's not about morality. The laws are there because they're moral, because it's moral to do those things. But that's not about dictating to you people's morality or their education or their happiness. After all this, it is hardly necessary to quote the same opinion from Morley, Bafu, Owen, Saint Simeon, and Fermieux. I think that's how you say that. I don't know. I don't know. Put a frog in my mouth and I'll be able to speak French. Anyways, that's what it sounds like to me. It's gobbledygook language. Here are, however, a few extracts from Louis Blanc's book on the organization of labor. In our plan, society receives its momentum from power. Now consider this. The impulse behind this momentum is to be supplied by the plan of Louis Blanc. His plan is to be forced upon society. The society referred to is the human race. Thus, the human race is to receive its momentum from Louis Blanc. Now, it will be said that the people are free to accept or to reject this plan. Admittedly, people are free to accept or reject advice from whomever they wish. But this is not the way in which Mr. Louis Blanc understands the matter. He expects that his plan will be legalized and thus forcibly imposed upon the people by the power of the law. In our plan, the state has only to pass labor laws, nothing else, by means of which industrial progress can and must proceed in complete liberty. The state merely places society on an incline, that is all. Then society will slide down this incline by the mere force of things and by the natural workings of the established mechanisms. But what is this incline that is indicated by Mr. Louis Blanc? Does it not lead to an abyss? No, it leads to happiness. If this is true, and he's saying that facetiously, obviously, if this is true, then why does not society go there of its own choice? And it's in quotations as a reply, again, because society does not know what it wants. It must be propelled. What is to propel it? Power. Power. Yep. And who is to supply the impulse for this power? Why, the inventor of the machine. In this instance, Mr. Louis LeBlanc, or Blanc. The vicious cycle of socialism. We shall never escape from this circle. The idea of passive mankind and the power of the law being used by a great man to propel the people. Once on this incline, will society enjoy some liberty? Certainly. And what is liberty, Mr. Blanc? And here is his answer. He says, advice my dad gave me, which I hated when I was young. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Yep, got to start somewhere. All right. So, Mr. Blanc's response here. Once and for all, liberty is not only a mere granted right, it is also the power granted to a person to use and to develop his faculties under a reign of justice and under the protection of the law. And this is no pointless distinction. Its meaning is deep, and its consequences are difficult to esteem. For once it is agreed that a person, to be truly free, must have the power to use and develop his faculties, then it follows that every person has a claim on society for such education as will permit him to develop himself. It also follows that every person has a claim on society for tools of production, without which human activity cannot be effectively effective. Now, by what action can society give to every person the necessary education and necessary tools of production, if not by the action of the state? Once again, I mean, it gets tired. I'm reading this, it gets tired over and over again because it's always the same. It always comes down to the same things. But again, I read this stuff to you because I want you to know that people figured this out 200 years ago. They figured it out more than 200 years ago. They figured this out 5, 6, 7, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 years ago. But no one else paid attention because we're arrogant and we forget where we come from. Thus again, liberty is power. Oh my goodness. You cannot be more wrong. Of what does this power consist? Of being educated and of being given the tools of production? Who is to give the education and tools of production? Society, which owes them to everyone. By that action is society to give tools of production to those who do not own them. Why? By the means of action of the state, and from whom will the state take them? Let the reader answer that question, Bastiat says. Let him also notice the direction in which this is taking us. Yes. The doctrine of Democrats. The strange phenomenon of our times, one which will probably astound our descendants, is the doctrine based on this triple hypothesis: the total inertness of mankind, the omnipotence of the law, and the infallibility of the legislature. These three ideas form the sacred symbol of those who proclaim themselves to be totally democratic. Now, I want you to understand this. The inertness of mankind, the omnipotence of the law, and the infallibility of the legislature. Meaning that human beings would not act if the state did not force them. This is a mindset of an individual, many individuals in our federal government, who believe that they are themselves gods. And the people that believe that they should be doing this are worshiping them. They are idols. This, my friends, as I related to when I started the stream, is part of the mark of the beast and the beast system. I don't think that the mark of the beast is a actual physical mark. I think it's a mark in how you act, because it says it'll be on your hand or in your forehead. And the actual Greek word for that mark has to do with seals or coinage. And then it says, it talks about the economy, buying and selling, of course, but it's talking about the beast system and religion. So I put all that together, and what I see is world religion, world government, world economy. Just saying. And that is, if you read the occultists, we didn't get too much into it with Michael, but if you read the occultists, I mentioned it to him. He's like, yeah. And this is a guy who was an occultist at one point in his life before he came to the Lord. If you read what they have to say, and you see the things that these people say around it, you read people like H.G. Wells, you understand what the Rhodes Society is about, you know what the papacy is, in my opinion, not to be offensive to anybody, but you look at the banking systems, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at worshiping our government, worshiping the state, worshiping humankind, worshiping globalism and worldliness. And it only happens in tyranny. It can only happen in tyranny. These three ideas from the sacred symbol of the two who proclaim themselves totally democratic. The advocates of this doctrine also profess to be social. So far as they are democratic, they place unlimited faith in mankind. But so far as they are social, they regard mankind as little better than mud. Let us examine this contrast in greater detail. What is the attitude of the Democrat when political rights are under discussion? How does he regard the people when a legislator is to be chosen? Then it is claimed that the people have an instinctive wisdom. They are gifted with the finest perception. Their will is always right. The general will cannot err. Voting cannot be too universal. Sound familiar? We're restricting people's voting rights by making sure they say they are who they say they are. What? We're restricting their voting rights to make sure that they have the right to vote. Because some people have lost their right to vote. You can't vote when you're in prison, folks. You're not supposed to. People probably do. We're restricting the voting rights of the dead. Yeah. Lots of them. Happens quite often. And this is exactly. All of a sudden the legislatures trust the people when the people decide to give them power. Before that, the people can't decide on their own. But the people know what a good leader is. Yet they're too stupid to rule their lives. How does this work? This is circular logic, of course. And it doesn't work. It's untenable. When it is time to vote, apparently the voter is not to be asked for any guarantee of his wisdom. His will and capacity to choose wisely are taken for granted. Can the people be mistaken? Are you not living in an age of enlightenment? What? Are the people always to be kept on leashes? Have they not won their rights by great effort and sacrifice? Have they not given ample proof of their intelligence and wisdom? Are they not adults? That's what I say all the time. Most of them today, no. There's more to adulthood than your physical bodily structure, your hormones, your age. Adulthood requires acting like an adult. And when we keep infantilizing people through the government, degeneracy will rise, society will crumble, and we're going to have all the problems that Professor Dutton talked about that I brought up the other day. It's coming, guys. Probably, some of us, it might be in our lifetimes. I don't know how old everyone is here. I know Holly's a little bit older than I, but might be in our lifetimes. But if not, our children or our grandchildren are going to suffer. I'm telling you right now. Unless the Lord returns, which, boy, would that be something. So anyways, Are they not capable of judging for themselves? Do they not know what is best for themselves? Is there a class or a man who would be so bold as to set himself above the people and judge and act for them? Like Mayor de Blasio? No. The people are and should be free. They deserve to manage their own affairs, and they shall do so. And guys, this applies to people who don't do well at it. I'm sorry. There are folks out there who just don't manage their affairs well. But I'll tell you what, if you don't have an overarching governmental power trying to provide everything for them, what will happen is that people will step up and they'll help take care of them. There's a group called the ARC around here that takes care of, it's what is it? It's like the Alliance of Retarded Citizens. Like literally, I still use the word retard, but which is pretty based. But it's ARC for short, and they take care of like highly autistic people or people with mental disabilities, and basically there's just someone gets paid to watch them. It's a free market way to do it. We don't need the government. Now they might get government subsidies, I don't know, but some people will definitely need help. But what happens is true, real leadership that I'm talking about, not forceful leadership, but leadership through reason and through strength and trying to persuade folks or proving to folks that you're worth listening to, that maybe they should follow what you have to say. That's the kind of leadership I'm talking about. That all goes away. That disappears because people don't start picking up on who actually has good ideas or not. They go, oh, but the government's the leaders. Well, sure, I guess, but they're not really supposed to be. And how they lead is ineffectual and tyrannical and to line their own pockets. That's just the reality of it. So when you have a big, powerful government, real leadership, local leadership goes away. And we see that. We absolutely see that. And the system becomes corrupt from the top all the way down. Real leadership rises from the bottom. It's grassroots. It's decentralized. Everything else is tyranny. But when the legislator is finally elected, then indeed does the tone of his speech undergo a radical change. The people return to passiveness, inertness, and unconsciousness. The legislator enters into omnipotence. Oh, I love this book. I really do. It's just so on point. So, yeah, all of a sudden, the stupid people, the rabble, they know who the best leader is. Unless it's Donald Trump. Unless it's an anti-globalist. Unless it's an anti-establishment plan. And then those people, when you know how us deplorables are. Now, it is for him to initiate, to direct, to propel, and to organize. Mankind has only to submit. The hour of despotism has struck. We now observe his fatal idea. The people who during the election were so wise, so moral, and so perfect now have no tendencies whatsoever. Or if they have any, they are tendencies that lead downward into degradation. And yeah, that's just it. It's all silly. Once you pull back the curtain, you realize what's really going on. It's just despots wanting power and using manipulative tactics. And unfortunately, guys, I don't know. As far as left-wingers go, at least according to Rasmussen, no, it wasn't a huge survey sample, but according to them, lefties that watch mainstream left-wing outlets, only 20-some-odd% of them knew what was going on. It's also scary, though, that conservatives weren't that far behind. It was something like nearly 40%. That means the majority of conservatives watching just Fox News or whatever outlets were better informed, were still misinformed. They didn't know. 60% of them. And nearly 80% of the lefties. Now, how representative that sample is, I don't know. But I think the reality is, I don't know about any more today in this climate, if people are apolitical, but most people in real life are apolitical. And they espouse some stupid ideas that they heard that sound good because, bumper sticker emotional appeals are what most people function off of. And how do we get a society like this that doesn't live intentionally? Well, we do everything that these despots wish to implement. And we're just going to get stupider the more socialist we get. And we are a socialist nation. We're more of a fascist nation. It's soft fascism, but it is fascism, folks. We don't have a fully free market economy. We have tons of government intervention that you're not even aware of within economic policies. And to act like that America is some bastion of free market capitalism is ridiculous. I haven't looked in a while on the economic freedom scale, but we're well below so many other nations, and we should be number one. We really should. The socialist concept of liberty. But ought not the people be given a little liberty? But Mr. Considerate has assured us that liberty leads inevitably to monopoly. This is another big lie you guys get told all the time. We didn't worry about monopolies that much, really at all, until old Teddy Roosevelt came along. Or Roosevelt, as it's supposed to be pronounced, but we all say it the wrong way, so whatever. Old Teddy made a big deal about that, and all that did was just give the government more power. The only real monopoly there can ever be is the government. Now, that doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't look into antitrust or breaking certain things up or regulations or whatever when businesses are being immoral, like, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, because they're not acting and functioning the way that they're supposed to. They're supposed to be a public service, more or less. Right? That's what social media is. And I get Alphabet, Google, throws a ton of money into YouTube and they lose money on it. Well, that you guys, you're the ones that decided to do that. You're the ones who decided to allow people to stream for 2, 3, 4 hours or upload big, long videos. And it was great for your platform. But just like any other tyrant, they think they get to know better. They want to control the flow of information. And they are a monopoly of sorts, but there is competition. They're not a full monopoly. The only monopoly there exists is the government. I can go elsewhere, even though YouTube is big, and I will be on YouTube for as long as I can because it's easier to get people watching a YouTube channel than to me send them over to PeerTube that they've never even heard of before. Another reason why you guys need to like and subscribe and all that is because I want to get our numbers up to 300 so I can auto-upload to Odyssey instead of having to do it myself on the back end because that takes time. And it doesn't always work. Okay, Thane said the U.S. is ranked 20th according to Heritage. That is sad, my friends. Sad. That is economic liberty. What's Thane? If you do me a solid, dude, can you look up FEE and their scale because I think they have a scale too. All right, it says we understand that liberty means competition, but according to Mr. Blanc, competition is a system that ruins the business and exterminates the people. It is for this reason that free people are ruined and exterminated in proportion to their degree of freedom. Possibly, Mr. Blanc should observe the results of competition in, for example, Switzerland, Holland, England, and the United States. Those were all free market economies at the time. In fact, it was amazing here. It was amazing. After the revolution, the United States was actually kind of poor because they had not as many trade ties with before with the English businesses. So they suffered economically. But as industrialization improved and we kept to free market principles, we became astoundingly rich. There were some things that came in that were bad. Like I just said, old Teddy, obviously Woodrow Wilson and the income tax, as well as the Federal Reserve. But there's a reason why we had the Roaring 20s, guys. Lefties will disingenuously or naively or ignorantly tell you, that's why we had the Great Depression. No, the Great Depression was engineered. And you just need to go educate yourself, because it was. It was 1,000% engineered. And we 1,000% did everything we could to maintain it and stay in it, just like we did under Obama. It was funny how under Obama, we had 8 years of slow economy. Trump comes along, and within 3 years, everything's booming. People are making $5,000 more a year. $5,000. In the 16-year prior, they made $150 more a year. Under Bush and Obama. Come on, man. And really one of the only nations, I guarantee you, Thane looks this up, Switzerland's on that list of within the top 10. The Netherlands probably are up there. Singapore, Hong Kong would have been. I don't know where they're at now. I haven't checked in a long time, but we're not up there. Denmark, Sweden, which is funny because then you hear the lefties talk about, oh, the socialist paradise. It's like, dude, those have highly free market economies, and most of them, especially Sweden, from what I understand, their pension plans, that is their social security. We call it what it is here, socialized security. Over there, they call them pensions, and their pension plans are actually privatized. It would be like privatizing our social security. Every time we bring that up here on the right, though, in the United States, they go, whoa, hold up. How are we supposed to steal from that if it's private? I mean, it's just the reality. That's why they won't do it. That, no despot wants to give up their power. Sam says, from what I've heard, there was a heavy market crash in the early 20s, but the government, yeah, so under Calvin Coolidge, the greatest president ever, I mean, he was having an affair and some other stuff, so he wasn't a really moral man, but as far as what he did nothing. He let the market crash, and within a year, the economy recovered because he was a laissez-faire guy. Mr. Louis Blanc also tells us that competition leads to monopoly. And by the same reasoning, he thus informs us that low prices lead to high prices. Sound familiar, guys? That competition drives production to destructive activity. That competition drains away the sources of purchasing power. That competition forces an increase in production, while at the same time, it forces a decrease in consumption. This sounds like early Keynesianism. This probably is where Lord Maynard Keynes got his ridiculous, retarded ideas from. From this, it follows that free people produce for the sake of not consuming, that liberty means oppression and madness among the people, and that Mr. Blanc absolutely must attend to it. So the reason why I said this sound familiar, because, well, maybe you're not as versed in economic discourse and reading. I mean, I'm not, by far could have read far more on the subject, but I understand the basic principles of them. The Austrian school, and that's where the camp I sit in. The Chicago school is pretty good too, though. In fact, a synthesis between the two works pretty well, I would say. But here, this is the double speak, right? Again, I don't know what that article was talking about with euphemisms. I guess I get it. But euphemisms represent another word directly, and we all know it. Double speak is actually the inversion of speech. So, and I went on the wiki. That guy must have looked at wiki too. But I never, that conception of double speak never even occurred to me before. But then again, I haven't read 1984 since I was probably a teen. That competition drives production to destructive activity. Competition drains away the source of purchasing power. Yeah, all lies. Having trouble finding anything from Fee. I don't remember who it was that used to do it. I thought Fee used to put them up, but yeah. Working off your phone sucks. You know, that's usually how I always do stuff. You should just look for the most free market economies or something like that in a Google or DuckDuckGo search, but no big deal, man. I could have brought it up myself. I was just saying, I figured since you were looking at stuff, I'd ask you. Socialists fear all liberties. It's true. It's true. It's kind of like this. Bring it up real quick.
And for the...
Now, mind you, this, I'm more than certain isn't real, or I would have heard it before. But I guarantee you he said something like this behind the scenes.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
Now, deep fake or not, I'm telling you right now, this is what these folks believe. This is exactly what, I didn't mean to do that, but no biggie. This is exactly what Bastiat spoke of. Oh, am I glitching out? All right, guys. Sorry if I'm glitching out there. It says I have an error again. It's getting ready to storm around here, and for some reason that affects my internet quite often. So, it is 5:30 though, so I should be wrapping this up. So we'll leave off here at socialist fear all liberties. I think that's a good place to stop, and come back on Monday. But as I was saying, deep fake or not, that is truly what they do believe. And I know this because I have read their writings and their works. I have studied this for a very long time. I have studied the occult. Many of these people are members of the occult. Yeah, my CPU and everything's running fine. I'm only at 30%. Don't know why I got an error message, but whatever. But yeah, these folks, they're very arrogant, and a lot of them are taught this. So you get in these legacy families that believe that they should be doing this kind of stuff, that they should be dictating to the little guy, because they believe that, well, I have this wealth and my family has wealth because we're better. And then they're taught that, we don't want those dirty, nasty, scummy people around us. It's like people that live in cities. I think Tim was talking about this, Tim Pool, the other night, about people living in cities. I think he owned his show, and how they think that certain things are normal. Well, it was Lauren Chen that brought it up because she was on. And how people think that it's normal. She was hanging out with the Actual Justice Warrior. He does all right stuff. I don't really watch him too often. I used to more often, but I don't know. But she was hanging out with him. He lives in New York. And she was with her husband driving around and saying, you know, is this a good area? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, it's good here. And she's thinking, then I watched a drug deal go down. Yeah, because Sean over at Actual Justice Warrior has lived there for a long time, and that's normal. I don't watch drug deals go down around here. Some time ago, when I was still living in Maryland, in Hagerstown, we got a neighbor in. My neighborhood that I grew up in, my parents moved out when I got out of the Marine Corps. They bought a house down here, and I took over the rent. So I lived there for quite a while. And my ex-wife and I lived there. My daughter grew up there for some years. And the neighborhood went downhill. When I lived there as a kid, it was a maybe lower middle class neighborhood. We just drove by there the other day, and it is ghetto as hell anymore. And that says something to me about the extraction of wealth. On top of that, though, I had a neighbor years ago when I lived there still. We lived in a duplex, right? The neighbor just kept having cars coming in and out. And I remember telling my wife, these guys are dealing drugs over there. I was like, I don't really care as long as nothing goes on, but people are stopping. They're coming over for 10 minutes at a time. Constant line of cars. This is kind of crazy. So, you know when this stuff's going on, and that wasn't normal for that area. It wasn't downtown. It was some dudes selling weed out of their house. In fact, I ended up seeing the guys in jail because around the corner, they did a hit and run, and someone followed them home, called the police, and blocked them in the driveway. And then I got to, babysit them in jail for a while. They were all right guys. I mean, they weren't the worst, but man, that was so crazy. And that wasn't normal. I didn't grow up with that. I grew up running around the neighborhood. It's pretty safe all around town. And Hagerstown just keeps getting more and more redneck ghetto. More ghetto than redneck anymore. And the reason why, well, the city council, they're idiots. The county, they're idiots too. I used to work for them, I know. They want to revitalize the town, yet they have Section 8 housing in the market district that you would revitalize. No one wants to be around that. Frederick, Maryland, on the other hand, you go out there, they have a vibrant market. Amazing. You go down to Market Street, just tons and tons of bars and restaurants, great food. I used to date out there all the time, especially if I was dating people from like the DC area because it was a little bit closer. Phenomenal. Hagerstown can't get it together. And then they push businesses out. But a long time local sub shop, the guy was actually in the paper talking about it. Oh, well, town doesn't want to be good with our business. They've done stuff with liquor licenses that's just ridiculous. I'm all talking about way before the coup. With businesses that are thriving. Don't you want to encourage this for your city? Don't you want people to come here? No. It's always about lining their pockets and stupid other things. All right, guys. I'm going to get out of here. Sam says, the Obama clip just brought this to mind. If you listen to the old Motorhead song Bomber, the lyric is, a bomber sounds exactly like it's Obama, which is not fitting at all. Not one bit. Okay? And when people are dealing, there'll always be drama sooner or later. Right. And that was always the concern. My daughter was still little then, but those guys weren't the worst. Like I said, I'd seen them numerous times in their jail afterward. That was a big issue. It's probably why I got custody of my daughter. Well, there's a lot of reasons why I got custody of my daughter, but that was a big issue too, though, because I knew that some of the neighbors next door, when I wasn't living there, were, not good people. And I even pleaded to that case in court, and my her lawyer didn't show up on the initial thing. He was really sick, apparently. I don't know. And he was in the hospital. No one knew where he was at. And so the judge, instead of rescheduling or whatever else, just let her represent herself and then just gave her like carte blanche to do whatever practically, which meant that a 1 or 2 hour custody trial should be normal. We sat in court for like 6 or 7 hours. I kid you not. Absolutely insane. But in any case, I was talking about the certain people living in that area. And I was having issues. I was supposed to drop off my daughter to my ex, and she wouldn't be home and stuff, and I never knew when she was or wasn't. And so I like 100%, I told the judge all this stuff, and she tried to make a point. Well, don't you know that when you go to a restaurant, there are inmates and stuff there who work in the kitchen serving you food, or people that have been in and out of jail serving you food? And I'm like, yeah, I do know that. I know them all. And she's like, well, don't you know that when you go here or there are inmates? What's the difference between when, one living next door at our home, and of course my big concern was, what if this guy wants to kidnap my daughter because they know who I am? Mike's wife wasn't going to do nothing about it, and that was her thing. Why aren't you worried about it then? And I just said, because I'm with her, and I know that I'll protect her, but you aren't even home. You're out getting drunk and doing stupid, crazy stuff. And making your teen daughter raise our little girl. Anyways, I'm going to get off talking about me and my high horse. Hey guys, once again, please like, share, subscribe. The thing, man, the thing. I appreciate y'all. Got Matt Man sending me a GIF in the D-Live chat. Little kitty. Thanks for watching, partner. Please follow if you're over on D-Live, if you haven't already. I should set up some links in the D-Live now that I'm thinking about it. I haven't done that yet, so I'll get that taken care of here soon. Thank you all once again, as always, for watching. Sorry if the stream's getting weird. I'm getting all kinds of messages. Storm's a-coming. Storm is a-coming. I'll be back over on the Ends Justify the Memes Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. That is Eastern Standard Time, U.S., and we will be back, of course, next week, most likely at 7. I might have to push that back. My daughter's graduation is that evening. So we might have to start a little late. I got to talk to Tank about that. But we should be over there with Wes Waverland on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Otherwise, unless something comes up, I'm not sure what's going on with my wife's appointments right now or whatever else, but unless something comes up, I should be back here with more of this kind of stuff on Monday. I try to stream every day from at least 3 to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. And I appreciate you all for watching. It keeps me going. So it is very motivating that you guys are here to listen, and every day you show up. I appreciate it so much. So with all that said, folks, this has been the Ends Justify the Memes. No, not the Ends. That's the wrong show. This has been All Minus One. I'm Bill, and I wish you all well.